Hi everybody and welcome to Small Bites. I am Dr. Karen McDowell and I am here today to talk to you about loneliness. Now, I think this is a really important topic to talk about, especially right now where we're dealing with a season that often brings loneliness with it, on top of a pandemic season that has brought a lot of loneliness to a lot of people's lives. Loneliness is really common. I work as a therapist, as an educator, and a writer, and I see this come up so often. I see loneliness come up so often. And what I think is so interesting about it is that people often feel like their loneliness is really unique, or that it's uncommon, or that it's really strange to feel lonely. And it's really not. It's really, really, really common. It's a really normal experience. So I want to take some time today to kind of talk about that. I want to talk about what loneliness is, why it happens. I want to talk about what are the consequences of loneliness? How does it affect our lives? What are the things that happen because of loneliness? And I want to talk about how to move through loneliness so that you can get back into a happier and more connected space in your life. This video is brought to you by The Gracious Mind, and we are expanding our Small Bites programming. So we have been doing Small Bites live on Instagram, and we are going to keep doing that, but we're pairing them with our YouTube videos now. So this is a Small Bites video, and tomorrow, if you're seeing this video on the day that it was posted, tomorrow, Wednesday, we're going to be having a live chat on Instagram at noon Central Time. Join us on Instagram to ask your questions about this video, to offer your insight or offer your comments. We definitely want to hear from you. If you are watching this after that time has passed, you can always go to our Instagram and watch the live chat and see what people had to say. So why do we feel lonely? Where does that come from? Of course, feelings come from our limbic system, and it comes from circumstances around us. It comes from the way that we think about things. But we can understand loneliness, I think, as the space between how much we desire interpersonal connection and how much interpersonal connection we actually have in our lives. So if you are alone, you may not feel lonely. And when you're with a lot of people, you may feel very lonely. So the actual proximity of people around you doesn't actually dictate loneliness. Often it's the connection that we feel or don't feel that defines loneliness. One of the biggest things that happens, I think, with loneliness is that fear, shame, guilt trifecta that I talk about all the time. Those are, the fear of loneliness, the fear of what it means that you're lonely, the fear of what it means that you don't have the connections that you want to have, the shame of feeling like people are judging you, like maybe you're lonely because something, that people don't like you, or that it means something, so you feel shame about that. And then guilt, feeling guilty for doing whatever it is that is making you lonely, or it must be your fault that you're so lonely. And that fear, shame, guilt trifecta kind of nestles in with loneliness and just kind of puts roots down and sticks there. Now, I mentioned earlier that loneliness can come from different places, like circumstances happening around us. Right now, there's a pandemic. It's a very lonely time, I think. But loneliness can also come from the way that we're thinking about things. So that can be the expectations we have of others. If we expect that other people are going to behave in a certain way and they don't, that may leave us feeling lonely through no fault of anyone other than your own expectations. I think also the idea of how we think about things and how we interpret what certain things mean. Sometimes when we get lonely, we feel really lonely. When we perceive a rejection, or we perceive that somebody doesn't want to be around us, we feel it even stronger and we believe it even more because we're so sure that our loneliness is how we're just destined to be, or that's the truth of it. And loneliness can be kind of self-protective in that way. As we become more lonely, we start doing things that push people away from us, and that causes loneliness to persist. And so that's why I think it's really important to examine this topic. So let's talk about some of the consequences of loneliness. What happens when we feel lonely for a long time? We may have short bursts of loneliness that may be circumstantial, or that may be, just like seasonal or whatever. And we may have episodes of like chronic loneliness, of long-term loneliness. And what do these things do to our bodies and to our minds? People who have chronic loneliness, or even frequent episodes of shorter loneliness, have weakened immune systems. Heart disease and cancer advance a lot faster. Cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's, all of those are worsened considerably by loneliness. But loneliness also messes up your sleep. It causes disrupted sleep. It decreases your immune system, so it's harder for you to recover or kind of bounce back from minor illnesses or major illnesses. And then it intersects, loneliness intersects with physical illnesses all the time. People with chronic illness or chronic disabilities makes it a lot harder to get that interpersonal connection. And then those chronic illnesses often worsen and the symptoms worsen and the pain levels are higher, or the illness levels are higher because of that loneliness. Of course, loneliness also impacts your mental health, right? It increases anxiety, it increases depression. It also increases the volume on that inner critical voice, that voice inside you that's like, you're terrible, you're doing things wrong, everything's awful, it's all your fault. That voice, when we have good interpersonal connections and we get contact and we have intimacy with our friends and family, then that critical inner voice isn't the loudest voice in the room. But when we're lonely and there aren't these other voices or these other connections to help us kind of tamp down that voice, that critical inner voice gets so loud and it takes over. So that critical inner voice starts turning outwards and it begins criticizing externally as well. And so that, again, like I mentioned earlier, that idea of it sort of doing the things that push people away, that critical voice starts coming out. And often when you have chronic loneliness, you end up being more irritable or more critical of people around you, which perpetuates the loneliness. But that's part of how your body is responding. Loneliness also makes it harder to tap into the coping skills you already have. You already have resilience skills. You already have coping skills. You already have all of this stuff that you need to kind of bounce back from loneliness and go out and find what you need out there in the world. But when you have ongoing loneliness, plus the circumstances of, say, a pandemic, then you start really struggling to implement those coping skills. Maybe the coping skills that you've always been able to use before aren't as applicable now or aren't as useful now, and you have to find new coping skills, but you're acutely lonely. So how are you going to find the coping skills and build new coping skills when you don't have that kind of support or that kind of structure there? It's frustrating and it's a tough cycle to break. So let's talk about how to break it. How do we move through loneliness? A lot of times when I'm working with clients, I hear them say, like, I don't want to feel this anymore. And I have to say, I'm so sorry to be the one to tell you this, but you don't get a pass from loneliness. None of us do. Everybody experiences loneliness at some point in their life. And, you know, it's a common and normal experience. So the first thing you got to do is you got to accept it, just normalize it, name it, say, I'm so lonely, I'm having a hard time right now. Those are okay feelings to have. It's not your fault that you feel lonely. It's not your fault that things are hard right now. It's okay to acknowledge those feelings. Kind of thinking about that critical inner voice again, you know, that voice is constantly telling you it's your fault or that there's something you could be doing different or whatever that voice is telling you. And so, you know, hearing that voice and being like, I'm not going to listen to you, little voice in my head. I'm just not having that. And starting to kind of push back against that critical inner voice is a really important part of moving through it. Now that doesn't, I hope you hear me saying moving through it, because that doesn't mean you're getting over it. It doesn't mean you're getting past it. It means you're going to move through it. It doesn't exempt you from the experience in the future. It doesn't mean it's going to get better quick, but you can say, this is where I'm at and I'm going to swim through this and I'm going to get to the other side of this and I'm going to feel better. That's totally okay goal. I think it's important to understand these feelings that come to us as messages, as containing information. If you are lonely, that means something. That may mean something about your past. That may mean something about previous times that you've experienced loneliness or you've experienced isolation or rejection. It may not. It may mean things about what your life looks like right now. But if you are having a strong feeling like loneliness, that's your body telling you, hey, you need to do something. Humans are hardwired as social creatures. We have to connect with other people to survive. And so if you are lonely from an evolutionary standpoint, your body is like, hey, bitch, you're not going to survive. Get up, go do something. And that's okay. So when that loneliness comes and you're like, I hate you, get away, get away, get away. Instead, try to shift and be like, this is a signal. This means something. It means that something I need is not being met. And I need to make some changes to get those needs met. It's really important that you think about and examine how you think about things. So we're getting very meta, right? You're gonna think about how you think about things. Start to observe your thinking patterns. Do you find that critical inner voice is louder than you really realized? Or maybe when you're out and about, if you get out and about, or when you're looking at things on social media or you're reading the news or whatever, like, is that critical inner voice constantly going? Just observe that. Non-judgment. We don't have to be mad at ourselves about it. No fear, shame, guilt, but just observing how you're thinking about things and how you're thinking about other people and how you're interpreting things, what you believe about things. All of those things are really important for you to examine, and they absolutely will help you move through loneliness. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do that. I really enjoy CBT workbooks, cognitive behavioral therapy workbooks. You can get them on Amazon. They're pretty inexpensive. And those are really helpful. They guide you through kind of examining your thoughts and what does that look like. If that doesn't feel attainable, or you feel like maybe doing a workbook isn't an option, then doing therapy is a great way to do that, because that really is a lot of what therapists do, is really encourage you to examine how you're functioning, examining how you're thinking about things so that you can make whatever changes you want to make in your life. And then my last piece of advice for loneliness is about practicing generosity. This is one of the most evidence-based ways of decreasing loneliness, is by practicing kindness, practicing generosity, practicing community care, whether that's volunteering, whether that is helping at cleaning up trash in the neighborhood, that can be random acts of kindness for strangers or for people that you come into contact with, any of those kinds of things where you're sort of extending something without the expectation of return, right? Without that expectation. If I do a random act of kindness, I'm not like, well, where's my random act in return, please? We just do them to do them. And so that really is, I think, your challenge piece on this, from this video, is moving forward with acts of generosity and acts of kindness, and see how those help. Not only does it help decrease loneliness, it decreases that critical inner voice, it increases contact with people outside of your immediate vicinity, and all of those things are going to help as well. So hang in there. I know that loneliness is a hard thing to manage, but you are not alone. If you need help, you can always visit our website, thegraciousmind.com. We have therapists that are available, very low cost, sliding scale fees. We also have resources lists on the website. Again, it's thegraciousmind.com. On the website, there are tons and tons of resources for you to find support, find information, hotlines, chat rooms, books, all kinds of things that you could ever want. You can find that on our website. You can also find The Gracious Mind on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, all the places. Please be sure and share this video if you think that it is relevant to people in your life. Please like and subscribe the YouTube channel. It makes a huge difference in how much work we can do. And head over to thegraciousmind.com gift shop to find cool things, including my brand new anxiety stickers that just came out. So that's our Small Bites video for today. I will see you tomorrow for Small Bites Live at noon Central on Instagram at The Gracious Mind. It will be interpreted. And if you are watching this after and you've missed our Small Bites Live chat, number one, we do it every Wednesday, so just grab the next one. And number two, you can find it in our Instagram feed and catch up with all of the things that we talked about in our live chat. So y'all have an excellent day and take good care of yourselves and practice random acts of kindness.